Today's demonstration is blueberry crumb bars. This is a really good recipe with lots of fresh blueberries in it, with not a lot of added sugar, and some healthy oats are added in as well. So to start, we're going to preheat our oven to 375 degrees, which I've already done. Next, I'm going to grease a square baking pan, 9x9 or 8x8 inch, and then I'll go ahead and just set that aside. In a medium bowl, I'm going to want to stir together 1/2 cup of brown sugar. Brown sugar should always be packed unless a recipe says not to pack it. So I have filled my cup to overflowing, and then I will just use the back of a knife or a leveler to level it off. You'll know when you've measured brown sugar properly when it comes out like a sand castle. I'm going to also add in my baking soda. For this, I need 1/4 of a teaspoon. Sprinkle that in. For the flour, I'm going to use 1 cup of either whole wheat or all-purpose flour. I'm going to be using all-purpose flour because that's what I have. If you want to make it healthier, using the whole wheat flour will make it packed more full of nutrients. Whenever we measure flour, we want to gently spoon it in so that it does not compact. Fill it to overflowing, making a mess on your counter if your container is too small, and then use the back of a knife to level it off. We'll add in our flour, and then we are going to need 1/2 cup of oats. So for this, I'm going to just use that same method, scooping to overflowing and then leveling it off. Adding that in, and then also a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Filling that to overflowing and leveling off as well. I'm going to go ahead and give that a quick stir. And set it aside. Next up, I'm going to be using 1/2 cup of cold unsalted butter or margarine. So that is 1 whole stick is 1/2 cup. It says to cut it into small pieces. This will just help us to combine it. You want the butter to be cold to give the crumb in the blueberry crumb bars a nice flaky texture. So you don't want it to be softened at all. Have it come straight out of the fridge. And then I'm going to put that into my mixture. And then I'm going to use either a fork or a pastry blender if you have one. This will work a lot easier to cut the butter into the flour mixture. And I'm going to just do this a little bit before I add in the egg. Once the butter is mostly cut into small pieces, I'll continue to do it a little bit more after adding, but you'll want to go ahead and add in your egg, which I'm going to crack into a separate bowl so I don't get any eggs in my egg shells into my mixture. And then put that in, and then I can finish mixing this up together. After you get to a certain point, it may be kind of hard to use the pastry blender anymore because it'll start to turn really doughy. So you can kind of use your hands to break up some of the bigger clumps of butter. It's still going to be a really crumbly dough at this point, which is what you want. You want that butter to still be intact and not be melted in with the rest of the ingredients, but you don't want to have giant clumps of butter. So you can use your hands, clean hands, to go through and make sure that that is all into some nice, smaller sized pieces of butter mixed in with the dough. Once you've done that, you'll go ahead and put about half of your dough into the prepared pan. Prepared just means that we've already done whatever the recipe asked us to do to prepare it, which in this case was to spray it with cooking spray. So I'm going to put about half of that mixture on the bottom and press it in. and then go ahead and set that aside. Now I'm going to make our blueberry filling. For this, I'm going to combine 2 cups of fresh blueberries. You can use frozen blueberries for this recipe. Just don't thaw them because that will release a lot of moisture, and you don't want the moisture being released until you're cooking. I almost measured a half of a cup. I need 2 full cups, so I'm going to go ahead and measure that. 2 full cups is about 1 pint of blueberries, give or take. I just had this bigger container in my house, so that's what I'm using there. Then to that, I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of granulated sugar, or just plain white sugar. Going to scoop that out to overflowing and level off. So although this recipe does have sugar in 2 parts of the recipe, it really, neither one is very much sugar. So that helps to keep the recipe lower in calories and sugar. And then to this, we're also going to be adding 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I so happen to have a fresh lemon, but you certainly can use store-bought lemon juice. So I'm just gonna go ahead and squeeze that into a bowl. 1 whole lemon usually puts off about 3 tablespoons. So I probably won't need to use all of this juice, but I'm gonna go ahead and just juice a whole lemon. And then measure out 2 tablespoons. So just as a note, the tablespoon is capital T. That's the bigger of the spoons, whereas a teaspoon is the smaller of the spoons. There are 3 teaspoons in 1 tablespoon. So 1 tablespoon is a lot more than a teaspoon. So just make sure 3 times as much. Make sure you're using the right measuring utensil. So I'm gonna sprinkle in 1 tablespoon and 2 tablespoons there. And then the last ingredient that I'm going to be adding is cornstarch. So cornstarch will work with the liquids from the lemon juice, and once the blueberries start cooking, they'll release some liquid, and this will just kind of help thicken that liquid. And so I'm going to be measuring out 2 teaspoons of cornstarch and adding that in. Go ahead and just give that a nice stir. Make sure all of our ingredients are combined. Then I'm going to sprinkle this blueberry mixture over my bottom dough crumb layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and pour or sprinkle the remaining dough over the top. There you have it. Now this is ready to go in the oven until it's been baked and is slightly browned. And I'll see you back then. And here we have our final product of the blueberry crumb bars. What you're looking for is to see that the liquid in the blueberries is kind of bubbling and the top has a nice golden brown color. You'll want to wait till it cools. And then once it's slightly cool, you can put in the fridge if you want it to cool down faster. But you want to wait till it's mostly cooled down to go ahead and cut it into the bars so they don't fall apart. There's our final product.